Hello, everybody. This is Caring for Creation's Trash Day, and we have the lab outside, which I hope many of you had a chance to look at, and we'll look at if you haven't been to it yet. And we have the great resource here of Brian Johnson, who is the City of Madison's Recycling and Public Information Officer. And Brian's quite a communicator. He regards himself, he said that he thought he was going to be a teacher, but he ended up being a preacher, and putting out the word on what to do with all the stuff that we produce. And he's from Illinois, near in the St. Louis area, and graduate of Eastern Illinois University, but he went into government work, and this is something he didn't really expect to do, to be a recycling coordinator, but it shows up in all of the terrific materials over there, which I suggest everybody take a copy of, at least some of it, particularly the Recyclopedia, which is Brian's creation. And it really tells you everything you need to know, and all in very precise detail as to how to properly take care of your stuff. So Brian also appears on when the city has a storm. He is the guy who is interviewed by TV and gives the word about the streets department strategy and so forth. And so we're very lucky to have him here. Brian Johnson, our recycling coordinator and public information officer of the City of Madison.
Thank you, David. Thank you. Just so Tony Romo doesn't think I was an alum of his, it was Southern Illinois University. It was Southern Illinois University, Edwardsville was where my undergrad from. Is Minnesota State University Mankato is where I got my grad degree from. So a whole mouthful of colleges and everything like that. That's why I don't blame anybody for just trying to shorten it up. And yeah, like the St. Louis area. If I say I'm from Illinois, you're going to assume I'm from Chicago. I'm actually from like the state of Illinois, though. So I'm like the southern part. That's why like I'm a little bit southern, but I lived in Minnesota. Downstate, yeah. And I lived in Minnesota for a little bit, so every once in a while I will round my O's because I hung around a lot of people from like Duluth and North Dakota and all that. So I lived in Mankato for a little bit, so every once in a while it comes out. I can't help it. But anyway,
I'm from Evanston.
Evanston, yeah. So I sound the way I sound. So anyway, it's not why we're here. We're not talking accents. We're talking City of Madison recycling. So Madison's recycling program started well before I was here. Actually started in 1968. We were probably the first recycling program in the entire country, more than likely. We got going before Earth Day. We started with just newspapers at the curb. The reason why is that the Forest Products Lab was looking for a place to trying to help. Was the American Paper Institute, I believe, was trying to find another place to source paper, and turns out we were collecting a lot of newspaper at the curb. It was cheaper for them to make new newspaper out of the paper we were collecting at the time, and voila, the paper recycling program was born. This particular photo was one that we took at the time. It was like in the early 70s. That's how we were doing it then. And we have a link to our website of we made a little video about the recycling history of Madison. It was our 50th anniversary of us doing it a few years ago. And recycling has changed a little bit, in like the 50 some odd years that we've been doing it, from this to this. And of course, the stuff in our lives has changed quite a lot in the past 50 plus years, especially what we can recycle has changed a lot. It's not just newspapers anymore. It's metal cans, plastic containers, it's glass jars and bottles. It's a lot of stuff in our life, and that stuff in our life is always changing a lot too. But that's basically what we can recycle now in the carts at your home. Right, so I'm talking recycling, I'm talking the green carts at your house. And I'm the City of Madison recycling coordinator, so if you happen to live in Sun Prairie, say, or another municipality, Most of these rules will apply to you, but not necessarily all of them. We'll get into some of the sort of the weirdness of recycling here in a little bit. But and so what's actually in the City of Madison recycling carts, that's sort of the breakdown right now. Every year, Pelletary Waste Systems, that's the company who actually receives the recycling. So the way the system works, the City of Madison goes around and collects it. We take it to Pelletary, they sort it and sell it on the open market. That's the way the business model works. And so, and they do a sampling every year to kind of determine like what percent of the material, it's this percent paper, this percent cardboard, this percent plastic, and this percent trash, right? So that's the stuff that just shouldn't be there. And last year, about 18.6%, we'll call it, was stuff that just shouldn't be in the cart. That could be anything from like clothes, styrofoam, just bags of garbage, a little bit of everything. And you can still see too, it's well over half of what we recycle is still paper products. It's cardboard, mixed paper, like junk mail, stuff like that. It's still a lot of paper stuff. A lot of that material goes right up to Green Bay. A lot of paper production in the Green Bay area is where it all goes. And also then there's the glass in that as well. A lot of this stuff does get processed here in Wisconsin too, like the glass containers. There's a glass recycler in Pleasant Prairie, Wisconsin. That's where they do that material. The metal goes to metal recyclers locally. The plastic does get a little bit all over the place, but they get chipped up and a lot of the plastic bottles gets made into carpet. Goes to Mohawk. Mohawk Recycling is a big purchaser of plastics. But plastics also, you notice, it's not one thing. We're going to get into plastics a little bit more later, but plastic isn't, whenever we say plastic, plastic's like saying fruit. You know, it's a category, it's not a single thing. Like your shower curtain and your milk jug are not the same thing. They're made of different stuff. It's sort of like a blueberry and a pineapple aren't the same thing. You know, even though they're both fruit, you wouldn't consider them the same thing. So you can't think of plastic as being one thing. Like it's a lot of different chemicals. It's a varied, complicated thing. And so why do we recycle? Pretty basic stuff, right? We want to reduce the amount of space that goes to the landfill because once you turn land into a landfill, it stays a landfill. There's not much else you can really do with the landfill space. You want to it's not making a whole lot of new land, so you want to reserve that, or space that, conserve natural resources, prevent pollution. Whenever you recycle more, you support American manufacturing, or you promote that sort of circular economy. And also, like landfills are that number 3 producer of greenhouse gas. There we go. And the enteric fermentation, anybody know what that term is? Know what that is? It's cow farts. That's what that is. And so is that interesting, like that's basically what enteric fermentation is, manure management, how much of that actually is just like livestock stuff, what comes into that. But so landfills do make up a good chunk of methane production as well. And so it makes sense to let's try to reduce what goes to the landfill. Let's try to keep that circular economy going. And it's that circular economy, that recycling is the engine that makes that circular economy works. It's the stuff that we don't want anymore, that we can give to somebody else, that makes a new product out of it, that we can then reuse again, and just sort of keeps that engine moving, right? It's that business model that makes recycling work. That's sort of the thing. That's what made it work in 1968. That's what makes it work today. It's the economics of it. That's why it goes. And so we're going to take a little quick break. So I want to show you really quickly about what happens to the stuff after it gets, so we pick it up from your house, we take it to Pelletary. Pelletary has a really good video about like what they do with the stuff after they sort it. So we're going to take a quick little side thing.
Have you ever wondered what happens to your recyclables after they're collected from your home or business? Please enjoy watching how Pelletary Waste Systems separates and prepares your recyclables so they can be shipped to end users to be made into new products. As recycling trucks arrive at Kip Street Station, they back into the facility and unload recyclable material onto the tipping floor. The loader then piles up the recycling. When the system needs more material to sort, the loader will grab from the pile and load it into the first piece of equipment, the metering bin. The metering bin's function is to produce a constant flow of material, which is essential to allow the sorting equipment to function properly. After the material is metered, it goes up the first conveyor and drops onto the pre-sort station. At the pre-sort station, we have several quality control people who are pulling out recyclable metal objects like pots, pans, and toasters. They're also pulling out recyclable bags of shredded paper. While pulling out these good recyclables, they're also looking for material that is not supposed to be in the recycling. Ropes, water hoses, large non-bottle plastics, trash, diapers, loose plastic bags, and clothing are sometimes found in the recycling, but are not recyclable in this system. Contaminants will often cause good recyclables to become unrecyclable, and that material will go to the landfill. It's very important to only put approved materials into your recycling container so that good recyclables are not contaminated. As material leaves the pre-sort station, it goes up another conveyor and drops into the old corrugated cardboard, or OCC screen. As the cardboard moves across the screen, it will be touching multiple discs, allowing it to stay on top of the screen and move forward. Smaller recyclables will fall between these discs, drop down, and move on to the next piece of equipment. Under the OCC screen is a debris roll screen, which acts like a glass breaker and breaks bottled glass into quarter-sized pieces. The broken glass then falls through the debris roll screen and goes into a glass cleanup system that removes pieces of metal and other small non-glass items. After the glass and cardboard is removed, the recyclables move on to the newspaper screen. The newspaper screen uses the same concept as the OCC screen. The steep angle uses gravity to force three-dimensional objects like detergent bottles to bounce backwards and off the screen, while two-dimensional newspaper rides up and over. The third and final screen is the polishing screen. Small papers move up and over the screen onto the paper sorting platform. Gravity will cause three-dimensional materials to bounce backwards and off the back of the screen, where they're conveyed onto the next process. Just after the polishing screen, we have a quality control optical sorting machine. This equipment uses light and magnets to identify any metal or plastic material that is flattened enough to act like a piece of paper and remain in the paper stream. Once this material is identified, it is hit with a shot of air and removed from the paper stream so that it can go on to be sorted with all the other plastic and metals. At this point, we have a quality control station to look for any paper that has gotten through the screens. Generally, this would be three-dimensional paper products like phone books, balled-up paper, or juice and milk cartons. These materials are pulled and sorted. Now that all papers have been sorted out of the recyclables, they go to the paper platform. There are several stations where people are removing contaminants, such as plastic films or trash from the paper. By the time the paper gets to the end of the conveyor, it will meet the paper mill's specifications. After all the paper products and glass have been removed and sorted, all that's left in the system is plastics and metals and other non-recyclable materials. A magnet removes all of the tin and steel cans. A second magnet system, called an eddy current, removes the aluminum cans. Since aluminum doesn't stick to a magnet like tin or steel, this piece of equipment spins a magnet extremely fast, and this produces a magnetic field that repels the aluminum cans, causing them to jump off the conveyor and onto their own storage area. After the metals have been removed, all that is left is number 1 through number 7 plastic bottles and trash that hasn't already been pulled out of the system. These bottles go onto our plastic sorting platform, where robotic arms use artificial intelligence to target and pull number 2 plastics like milk jugs, laundry detergent jugs, and shampoo bottles. The bottles that remain on the line go to the optical sorter. This machine shoots a ray of light into the plastic and reads how the light reflects back. A computer analyzes the light and determines if the plastic bottle is a number 1 plastic or a number 3 to 7 plastic bottle. The optic system will then shoot a perfectly controlled blast of air at the bottle, which directs it to either the number 1 plastic storage area or the number 3 to number 7 plastic storage area. Non-plastic material does not have air shot at it and falls onto the residue conveyor, which leads to the trash. Before this material goes in the trash, we have our final quality control station. The robotic arm uses the same artificial intelligence system and is responsible for pulling out any recyclable material that was not properly sorted. Once material is sorted, it's stored in bunkers. The sorted material gets pushed onto a conveyor that goes into the baler. The baler will compact the loose material into a large brick-like bale that uses metal strapping wire to hold it together. These bales are stored in a storage area and ready to be shipped to an end user. A majority of our paper and cardboard goes to paper mills in Wisconsin and Indiana, where it is made into new paper or cardboard products. Tin and steel cans go to local metal recycling companies and are eventually melted down to make new metal products. Aluminum cans are melted down to make new aluminum cans. Our plastics go to processors that shred the material into flakes, which are used to make new plastic bottles or other plastic products like plastic lumber, landscape edging, and drainage tiles. The glass gets color sorted and melted down to make new glass products. Thank you for watching how Pelletary Waste Systems sorts and prepares your recyclables to be shipped to manufacturers so they can be made into new products. Remember to please keep contaminants out of your recycling so they don't contaminate the good recyclables.
And there we go. First time they ever got an applause for their video, so I'll have to let David know. So it's a ton of work to make recycling simple. And I like showing this for a couple reasons. One, because it's impressive how to make recycling easy, how much work it takes on the back end to make it simple. And also I think it helps make the rules make a little bit more sense, because why can't we put things that are really small in the recycling, like shredded paper loose? Because it winds up in the glass. Anything smaller than a Post-it note falls in with the glass, and that's one more thing they have to clean out. I was at a conference recently, and they had a glass recycler there and talked about how fussy they have to be with their tolerance level with contamination with the glass, especially with things like stones and rocks, how they can have very little of that mixed in with the glass, because how much of a safety hazard it can be when they're trying to melt the stuff down to make new bottles. Because whenever they're pouring the molten hot, cullet into form a bottle, they don't want to try to cut it, accidentally hit a stone that didn't melt right, and then fling this whole melted blob of stuff off the conveyor. It could hit workers and that. It's hugely dangerous. But that's why you can't put baking dishes or other non-bottles and jars in with the glass, because it could wind up being a safety issue for the people down the line that's trying to make new bottles and jars out of the glass that we're trying to recycle. That's why batteries are a huge problem for recycling industries. This industry, this is a worldwide problem, because I mentioned how our recycling is still over 50% paper. Batteries, especially little lithium batteries, are a fire hazard. They have a lot of energy still in them. And lithium batteries can be in anything from our cell phones to computers. The greeting cards that light up and play songs, those are little lithium batteries in there usually that play that stuff. And if you think of a system that's that much paper, if something were to spark or pop, because we've had them at our facility kind of go off like a firecracker before, there's something that's about 50-something% paper that just pops like that, you can lose a whole building like that to a fire pretty easily. We've had, a little later in this presentation, there's a picture of a truck fire that we had a couple years ago. There was whether or not it was a battery or not, it's hard to say, but all of the rules that we have are because that's the system we have to sort it. That's why we can't put loose plastic bags in that recycling cart, because it tangles up the robots. It's it just winds up getting sucked up into those robots, and then it's pulling handkerchiefs out of a clown sleeve, because it jams that up, or it binds up around the rolls, and they got to stop everything, and they got to get out there with razor knives and just hack it off there, because that's the only thing you can do. And so it's really time consuming. It adds a lot of labor and cost and things like that. So it's a problem. And so with that much trash that's going into that recycling, because I guess there's that feeling too. I mentioned plastic is like fruit, it's a category, it's not everything. There's this sort of persistent belief that, oh, it's plastic, you can recycle it, you can throw it in there. That's why you wind up with basketballs in the recycling cart. Bowling balls too. I've heard like multiple times with like people finding bowling balls. I was just at Milwaukee just built a new recycling facility. Waste Management built a new recycling facility, like the video we just saw. Where Waste Management just completely redid their facility. I toured it just a couple weeks ago, and they had a bowling ball roll through there, and like I've heard multiple bowling ball stories actually, and I don't know why. If people are really, I think it has something to do with things we value. We don't want to put in the landfill. So that's why we see so much clothes in the recycling, because we value our clothes and we don't like the idea of throwing them away. So you put them in the recycling thinking, well, maybe I see your question, we're going to hang them down to the end. So we're going to hang on to that. So maybe they really value that basketball or that Christmas tree or whatever in that white bag, and so, or they just don't know, or they think, oh, it's plastic, and so they're putting it in there anyway. But putting that much trash in the recycling, it's about 3,000-ish tons of trash that would wind up in the recycling that didn't need to be there. And it cost us a little under $300,000 to deal with that stuff last year as a city. That's what that contamination means. That's trash in the recycling. That's the term that we use, like in the industry, for trash in the recycling. And when we think of the trash percentage as well, like in 2020, as part of a statewide waste characterization study that the DNR did, they looked at the Dane County landfill was part of that study. And so they were able to look at the residential percentage of trash. So they were able to break down the amount of trash that goes to the Dane County landfill, and this is the residential percentage. So the city of Madison, what we take from residences goes in that sampling, right? That's kind of how it broke down. So it was X% paper, X% plastic, metal, glass, organics. That's where the food scraps live, is in that organics portion, right? And so then C&D is construction and demolition. Problem materials is stuff that really shouldn't even be in the trash. Think like televisions and other things like that people cram in the trash and hide, that they shouldn't be there. Other waste and fines are like dirt and other little bitty like sand or a little grit kind of stuff that's sort of hard to quantify. So within the trash, probably another 4,000 tons of recyclable stuff that people put in the trash by mistake, or because they didn't know, or they didn't care. It's hard to say. That's my best guess, based off the numbers that I saw from the sort. That's ignoring this bit here, the food scrap part. That's a whole other thing that we're going to talk about in a sec, because that's also recoverable, but just not in the green cart. If you were putting food in your green cart, stop it. That's a problem too. You don't put food in that recycling cart. That flings around, it causes other problems. Where it doesn't so much ruin like a whole batch of recycling, but it makes the value of the material that much less. It makes the whole process work a little more poorly, I guess you could say, because the system only works whenever the material is desirable. So if there's an end user who doesn't want to buy it because, oh, it's all covered in peanut butter all the time, I can't buy your paper, that means it's hard to sell it. So you want to keep it clean, so it keeps it desirable, so the people that are making paper out of it always want it, and it keeps the system rolling like that. That's the whole thought process. So why? Basically why? Why is there so much? That was sort of whenever me and David were talking about this presentation, it got me thinking, is like, why is there so much trash in the recycling? Why is there so much recycling in the trash? It's like, it's the goober conundrum, right? Why the peanut butter and the jelly and the peanut butter kind of a thing, right? For people that remember that television commercial. So like, why does this problem exist? What can we do about this problem? Because it's persistent, like I haven't really seen a good like national average number for the amount of contamination or trash in the recycling, but it exists. It's I've seen once it's like 25% maybe about the amount of trash in the recycling, but I don't trust that source of that number. It was like a blog from this company, and I haven't seen like a good number for that. So like, but what's the source of this issue? Well, there's several problems. The system itself, there isn't a national standard for recycling is one problem. So if you decided today, you're like, you know what, nuts to Wisconsin, I hate this winter, I am moving to Louisiana, I'm just gonna do it. Well, recycling rules in Louisiana, not to pick on them, but they're different than Wisconsin. every state has their own different recycling rules around the country. This map is a little out of date. New York changed their recycling rules since I was last been able to get this map. And the study that I got this map from is now behind a paywall, so I can't grab an updated version of it. But like you can't recycle glass in some parts of this country, but you can here. Like Wisconsin in particular has very strong and specific recycling mandates, which is great whenever those got passed in the 90s, where number 1 and number 2 plastic containers have to be recycled. Those are milk jugs, those are laundry tubs, those type of plastic containers or pop bottles. Paper has to be recycled here. Cardboard has to be recycled here. Metal containers have to be recycled here. Glass bottles and jars have to be recycled here. That's not true everywhere. You know, it's like well over 95% of what we can recycle here in Madison has to be recycled by state law. That is not true everywhere around the country. We don't have the same kind of mandates everywhere, because in places that do have mandates are different by state too. And places that don't have statewide mandates, those vary too. I know when I was reading through this report, like if I remember correctly, I think like the Idaho mandate is something like it just pertains to car batteries, you know, and like the Delaware mandate is, if I remember right, it was, yeah, the Delaware mandate was, oh, no, they don't have mandatory recycling, but in Delaware, but it was, they have to charge you, but you don't have to have the service, or something like that, because the way the law was written. It's odd, it's a whole hodgepodge of stuff. So no wonder why it's confusing, especially in a town like Madison, where we're gonna take people from all around the country, where there's different rules everywhere, so there's not a set standard. Of course it's gonna be a little confusing. Now, to the EPA's, you know, benefit, this is something they rolled out last year about trying to do this national recycling strategy to improve education. There's grant programs in that to try to get a little better about it, so people can educate more about their local rules. But it's grant programs, it's super competitive. We did apply for an education grant, we didn't get it, but you know, because lots of people are thirsty for this money to help and do more. But there's a strategy to improve it, but not like blanket rules to make it the same everywhere though. Also, like, there's so many news stories that have big, loud megaphones that miss that nuance that recycling rules aren't the same everywhere. You know, because human nature, we're going to read a headline because somebody's, you know, and we may not drill into some of the finer points of it. Because, you know, Arizona can landfill cardboard. We can't here in Wisconsin. The story says some recyclers are landfilling your cardboard. You read that story, you think, well, that must mean where I live. Not necessarily, you know, because the story doesn't hit that point hard enough to make it clear how weird and varied all of these things are. It makes it hard to understand. It puts so much pressure on consumers of all this information to understand the nuance that they're not making you understand how weird the whole system is underlying all this stuff. And plus, just how we communicate in general is pretty weird these days. Our attention is split. Never mind, like there's so many, there's the traditional media is, you know, there's radio, local TV, cable TV, newspapers, all the different ways that still exist as well. And plus there's all the different streaming services, all the different like various other social media platforms. Those are all the ones I could think of that I could find pictures of their logos to throw up there. The way our attention is split. And that makes my job particularly difficult, because where do I put recycling information in a way that can reach everyone? Because it's not just people that, I mean, I have a website, I can do some mailings, I can do talks like this, but I can't do Twitch streams and Snapchats and Reddit pages and do a podcast and do an Instagram thing and do all of these things, because I am an office of me, you know, and it's hard to be everywhere all of the time, try as I might, and also like have a not job life as well. And there's all sorts of other like city rules and other stuff that just make it super difficult. And considering how split our attention is, and where all of these other super loud, credible voices are that are missing some of this nuance to some of these complicated issues, it makes it hard, right? And also, there's just the whole elephant plastics of it all that makes it complicated too. And I've said this a few times now, plastics is an umbrella term. It's not a singular thing. This particular photo is one that I took up in Green Bay. It was a conference I went on a couple years ago. It is a processing facility that is turning discard plastic bags or like film into something to replace or be like a supplement for electricity generation, where they're taking these like plastic bags and turning it into like these little nuggets, basically. And so it can be as a coal replacement type of thing where you can burn it for electricity. So all of that is like plastic film, you know? That's just bags and it's cast off stuff. It's industrial plastic stuff. It's like kind of bags and other stuff that wasn't quite good enough to wrap around other stuff. That's all what that is. And they go through that pretty regularly at this really small facility that we toured. There is so much plastic and so many different kinds of plastic in our lives every day. And it's when we think plastics, when we see the headlines of plastics, they're terrible, plastics recycling, and they show some photo of like a pop bottle and a milk jug. You can recycle those here in Wisconsin. I guarantee you they're being recycled here locally. But we kind of underestimate how much plastic is probably touching us right now that we don't even think about. Between our socks, the chairs, the carpet, the lining of this, the lacquer of this podium, it is so many places in our lives. Whenever you think of the problems of plastics, it is omnipresent. Next time you go to the grocery store, just look at everything that's covered in plastic one way or the other, between like cereal or bread or the produce aisle. It's a little frustrating, and how many different kinds of plastic there are too. It's not just pop bottles and that. It's these kind of bags, it's nylon, it's acrylic, I can go on and on and on. Like that number 7, by the way, those numbers you see and that triangle doesn't mean it's recyclable. That just means that's the type of plastic the thing is made out of. That's all that really means. Now, we've been conditioned to think that that's recyclable, but that's not necessarily right. And so that adds to the frustration, where this is what we have, And but 7 is a wild card number. That can mean like anything that's a plastic. It's not even like one type of thing. It's literally like a wild card number. So like it's so much stuff. It is so much stuff. And so that complicates it all. And then the other part of it is, our life and our stuff is changing a lot. Nothing ever stays static. That's not necessarily a bad thing either, because as packaging changes, things can get lighter. That doesn't necessarily, might make the carbon footprint of shipping something across the country a little bit less. That may not necessarily be a bad thing globally, environmentally, but things aren't necessarily designed for recyclability. That can be an issue. Those are just some older photos that I have. And some of these things that change where they're not they may not be right with the advice they give for where you are locally. Like that gel bag here that says recycle me on it, do not put that in your recycling cart. It's full of goop. I don't know what that goop is, but if it's in your recycling cart, it's going to get everywhere else. It's not going to stay in the bag. The single-use coffee pods, they're little trash things. They're just all garbage. Make a fine cup of coffee. But they're the perfect size to block the things that break the glass at the sorting facility. So they're made from polypropylene, perfectly recyclable type of plastic, but because they can clog the things that sort the glass, and they're usually full of coffee too, you don't really want them in your recycling because they're not the right size or shape. You want things bigger than a Post-it note so they can survive that sorting part of the sorting process. That's why you can choose reusable ones. There are reusable coffee things like that, which are fine. And there are some stuff that's confusing. This is something off a foam sheet. This is just a thing of styrofoam sheet. I got some shelving from IKEA, and that would slap that chasing arrow triangle on there. That was not, now I know that's not recyclable because that's my job to know, and it's not recyclable in our system, but that doesn't mean that wasn't made out of number 4 plastic. That's what that's really communicating to me. That's a polyethylene low density foam. That's what the PELD means, right? So that's technically correct, but that doesn't mean the same to me, who's got industry brain from working at this job for as long as I have, as opposed to someone who may not necessarily understand it, right? Or know or see those things differently. We may just say, oh, arrows, boom, recycling cart. But because now you've seen that video, this flappy sheety thingy, it's gonna wrap around those roll screens and knot that stuff up, so that doesn't belong in there. Actually, that type of foam too, you can't recycle it at our drop-off sites either with the styrofoam. It's the wrong kind of foam. Even foam isn't straightforward, because our stuff is so complicated in our lives. How awesome is that? So anyway, and also the new kind of 6-pack containers. Even though it says, recycled and recyclable, technically correct, but not in your cart. It's too flat for your recycling cart. Anything flat acts like cardboard. Remember how all those things, anything flat, like on those roll screens, the way it rolls up those little flat plastic things will wind up in the cardboard. Because that's the problem with anything flat plastic, anything plastic containers like that, like those plastic lids on your takeout plastic coffee cups like that. You can't put that in your recycling cart because it's going to wind up in with the other paper products because it's flat. Now that's made from that type of plastic. I have no reason to doubt that stamp on the top of that thing. But if there is a special take-back program for those kind of 6-pack rings, probably work fine. But the type of system that reclaims that type of plastic with everything else that goes onto your green carts, we can't fish those out with everything else. And there's stuff that we actually can reclaim changes to. We can't do plastic bags. Paper cups we can recycle now because that market did come up where we can get those. So the actual takeout, like your Starbucks cup, Culver's cups, those hot and cold drink cups can be recycled, provided that they're clean, empty, and dry. So if you're not comfortable holding it over the top of your head, then it's not dry enough. If you're willing to do this, then it's okay. If you're not, give it a sec. But what it really comes down to, at the end of the day, when it comes to putting stuff in that green cart, is you gotta follow your local rules. That's number 1, because you gotta know where you're living, you gotta know who handles your stuff, and then you gotta follow what those guidelines are. Because where you live and who handles your stuff is gonna vary. Because City of Madison, even our rules are probably a little bit different than places that are served by Waste Management, say here locally, or served by GFL or LRS. Not hugely different, because here in Wisconsin, most everything has to follow we have to follow those state laws. There might be some additions Madison does is different, but most of it's going to be the same in Wisconsin. But you move to Missouri, or if you move to Seattle or Louisiana or Tennessee or Arizona, there's going to be different. So you have to learn what those local rules are. And wish cycle, that's that term that's a business term, where you throw something in the recycling cart and you just really wish you could recycle it. So you just chuck it in there thinking, yeah, somebody will figure it out. No, they don't. They don't figure it out. They throw it away. That's what happens to it. Or it clogs the robot, or it causes issues, or it could start a fire, worst case scenario. There's issues. So just don't throw it in there hoping. You can look it up. You can ask a question. You can find the stuff. It can certainly help. And so it does, like I said, it's a lot of pressure on consumers because a lot of the stuff isn't designed because of the way the rules are. We try to make the information as readily available as I can, but it's tough. That particular guide is something we try to put in every new recycling cart. I have stickers of this over on the table there, so if your recycling cart doesn't have that on the lid, we have that. We have websites. I don't have an app right now, but I would love to have one if I can ever afford one. To have it in your pocket with you all the time. Magnets, flyers. Ask questions if you need to. Just try to make it available the best we can. And there's something we started a few years ago with Sustain Dane, this Recycle Better course, because our media universe is so split. I can't be in every conversation, so I started this course with Sustain Dane where we try to train up some local experts so they can be in more of these sort of conversations where it's a 2-night class. It's 90 minutes where we kind of do a deeper dive into recycling and kind of low waste and waste prevention in general. And then sort of a challenge at the end is that you teach somebody else or other group in your life what you've learned. That's the ask at the end. And then, so hopefully we have seed more expertise in the community, because I don't know what Twitch is. Well, I know what it is. I know it's a video game thing where people watch other people do video games. Cool, you can do that. I have at it, but it's not for me. But some people love it. And if maybe you want to be the recycling person for the city of Madison on Twitch after you take this course, David, you know, but it's not my thing. But that's the kind of thing where I'm hoping to, you know, what I would like to see out of this course, or we have a Spanish language version of that as well, where we're just trying to, how do we have these other community conversations out there, or these other sort of expertise in these pockets that we never think to come to me, and may never think to go to this scary City of Madison website. You know, they'll post it to a Nextdoor page with their question, who will post it to Reddit or these other social media sites, but for some reason won't ask the city for help. But they will do something else. It's like, well, how do we get more experts out there that won't just find some weird answer on Google where who knows where they got the information from, and think that's right because somebody says it really confidently online, even though the local answer is different and was what they really should be doing. And like this, there's the Sustain Dane website if you are interested. The first class is coming up. The first class is in person in the middle of the week. And so it's a little odd, but there's one later in the year that's online, that's in the evening that might be more easier to get to if you're interested. Oh, there's the battery fire I talked about earlier. Well, I guess I should be clear, we don't know for certain if it was a battery. We do know that it was a recycling truck that we had that started smoking out of the top of it. So we had to dump the load on the street, and then that was smoldering there, so we had to take all that to the landfill after the fire department put the fire out, because little propane tanks are also a common cause of it. Because you think recycling trucks, they crush the recycling just a little bit. They don't smush it flat, but they compact it a little bit. And those little lithium batteries too, if they get broken, that's what happens whenever they release their bit of energy, when they spark like that. But that happens with paper, or those little bit of propane tanks, especially those little 1-pounders. They're hard to tell if they're really empty, little camp stove things. If they happen to have enough little juice in them and they spark, poof, you can get fires like this. And so that's, you know, thankfully no one was hurt. The truck didn't catch on fire. We did lose that load of recyclables, but, you know, no one was hurt. The truck was fine, you know, but that's the way it goes. There was another smaller fire about 7-8 months later, that we didn't get as much of a dramatic photo of. It wasn't much of a conflagration, but it was smoking as well. Didn't have one in the last couple of years, thankfully, but still. There's other waste stuff. Don't forget, there's hazardous waste, your medical sharps and your medicine. There's special disposal rules for that stuff too. Recycling is more than your green cart, really quickly. There's other opportunities for this stuff, from metals to actual styrofoam, that foam sheet by styrofoam, this polystyrene, that's actually number 6. It's actually, if you break it, get little pellets. That's different than number 4. It feels different. Number 4 foam is really squishy and soft, and polystyrene, if you break it, it snaps. Like, it's different, but like we have styrofoam drop-offs. You can't put it in your cart, either foam. But if you bring it to a drop-off site, there's actually a business here in Madison that recycles styrofoam, that we take it to them and then they densify it and sell it, which is pretty cool. We're super lucky that we have that opportunity here. But you can't put it in your cart, because if you put it in the cart, it goes through that system, that video that we watched, rips it to shreds, you get little pellets all over the place, it's a problem. So with all the stuff that we're doing, all the recycling, it's still about 46,000 tons of garbage every single year that the Streets Division collects. We do not collect from every place in the city of Madison. All those apartment towers, anything over 8 units and over, the Streets Division doesn't collect from. We only do from 8-unit apartment buildings and under. So all of those new condo buildings and everything like that, that's not in that number. Okay, those are all privately hauled. We don't collect from the university. We don't collect from any like Maple Bluff or Shorewood Hills or anything like that. That's not in that number. So the amount of trash we're collecting or generating as a community is way higher than that number. So that's the floor, about 46,000 tons every single year, year after year, going to the Dane County landfill. So what do we do still with all this stuff? That's what the trash lab is out there for. The thing that's near-term development is this Dane County Sustainability Campus. As part of this, so the City of Madison sold 18 holes of the Ahari Hills Golf Course to Dane County for a landfill expansion and the part of the Sustainability Campus, where it's not just a landfill where we can try to divert more waste from the landfill to try to, like, how can we do more? So we just don't keep parking more and more garbage into the landfill year after year after year. How do we get smarter about this stuff? I mean, that's what this master plan is that's going to be there. Open doors 2026, probably, is what we're shooting for here. And as part of that is handling food scraps in a bigger way, because we know that's an issue. Mattress recycling, is a textile recycling, like what can we do there? There's going to be more. And food scraps as well is something that we are doing in a smaller way here locally now. It starts next Tuesday at the Eastside Farmers Market. We've been doing it for a couple years, so every Tuesday night from 4 to 7 p.m. you can bring food scraps to the Eastside Farmers Market. That's like coffee grounds, eggshells, banana peels, that kind of stuff. Take it to that farmer's market. They take it to a farm in Fitchburg where they compost it. He uses it on the farm to grow other material there. And there are some other details there. We're going to have 3 sites this year for food scrap drop-off site. And part of that sustainability campus is growing capacity so we can get more food scraps out of the landfill. That's going to take time to scale up. We've been trying to tackle food scraps for about 10 years in Madison, more than 10 years. Part of my receding hairline is food scrap related. That is another hour-long talk about how we've tried and failed about food scraps. Believe me, that's a fun one. And then, so the last thing about like waste in general, what are our options really when it comes with it, right? We can recycle it, right? We can keep consuming as we are, and recycle what we can, but you gotta think the stuff in our lives aren't really always made to be recycled, because you still need this other back end, right? To want what we don't want, so they can make a new thing out of it and sell it back to us. Without that end, the recycling doesn't work. Because there's the business of it has to work. You can landfill the waste, which is what we have now, which is not a great use of the land resource. There's waste to energy, which is actually Madison used to do from like the 70s to the 90s. There's where you'd burn the garbage to make power out of it, which has like air quality concerns. There's other issues with that. It's not a circular use of resources either, because if you're just taking the garbage and burning it up, that sort of becomes you want the waste then to keep yourself, to generate the power. It's kind of weird that way. There's places that have waste energy that actually import garbage so they can keep their waste energy facilities going. And then what else do you do with this stuff? There's like this chemical recycling thing that's happening, but that requires so much engineering and thought. And what do you do with the chemicals that are breaking down this stuff after they've done their deal, like that creates more waste? There's all this other engineering and thought that goes into like make our consumption a little bit better. It's wild to me. But so this is something else that we came up with Sustained Day. And when it comes to like, there's a waste management hierarchy from the EPA. When it comes to that source reduction, it's something I kind of sum up where like less waste is the best waste. It's like starting at the top, whereas that rethink, refuse, giving yourself time to rethink your waste first, or a hover moment is also another way to think. It's like really first assess what you're doing, rethink it, then stop making waste in the front end if you can. Then it's that reduce, reuse that we've all heard 1,000 times before. Then it's repair it. That's if you can't fix it, please do. Rot is the compost part of it. And then recycling it, there's sort of the tip of the spear there at the end, because it's reliant upon so many other systems to work right.
Brian,
And then I will be quiet, because there's the thing. And I'm so sorry for talking for so long. There's my contact information. And I have one more bad news slide if you really want to get into the city budget. But there's that, so we'll go there. So I am so sorry for talking for so long.
peanut butter containers.
Okay.
And other food containers that are, eminently, the plastic or glass is eminently
Yeah.
recyclable. Must they be clean before they're recycled?
Yeah, really, that's a common question. The how clean is clean? Is this the version of it I usually get, where it's really like it's honest effort is what you want to shoot for, where you don't, because the system works with the containers being empty, is how they want to bounce through the system. You don't want to leave it like half full or quarter full,
Right,
and you want
Stuff on the
to
sides.
wipe it out, or like soak it, give it a shake while you're doing the dishes. You want to do your best effort, leave like no obvious food chunks behind. You don't got to get in there and scrub it where it's like factory fresh. No one's expecting that out of it, but you want to at least, yeah, it doesn't have to be. You don't have to like obsess over it where it's like I need every speck off of this thing. Like it's not like a Lady Hamlet situation, or not Lady Macbeth situation.
To take the lids off.
Yeah,
And
well-
what do we do with those?
Yeah, the rule of thumb, like plastic lid, plastic bottle, lid on. If it's glass bottle, metal lid, lid off. So if it's a metal lid, you probably want to put that inside another metal container, pinch the top closed. So like that's what we do, like bottle caps, because anything flat most likely will wind up in the paper. So if it's a bigger metal lid, try to give it some three-dimensional shape so it'll bounce through the right way.
My question concerns shredded paper. Is it better than to take it to places that shred your paper? Because when you buy the bags for your shredder at home, those are plastic bags.
Okay. Well, with shredded paper, if you do it right for the cart at your house, it has to be in a bag you can see through. It has to be, you tie it closed, you tie it tight. It has to be about the size of a basketball. What happens at a place like Pelletary, they'll pull that bag off, and then they'll recycle the paper, then they'll throw that plastic bag away. So the places that shred it for you, they'll skip the plastic bag part more than likely. Like I know what happened. I can't speak for every company that does paper shredding, but here's my best guess. Because I know what Pelletary does, and I only know that because I talk with David Pelletary often enough to where I know their business model about this. So don't take this as a commercial for them. It's just because I just happen to know it. So I'm sure like You Shred It or the other companies that do this stuff are probably the same way, where they would just take the shredded paper directly to the paper kind of bunker area, and that would get bundled up separately, and they don't have to worry about the plastic bag of it all. And so it would just bypass it. I think the whole plastic bag of it is convenience for consumers, and so they don't have people dumping in the loose shredded paper, the shredded paper loose into the carts, that have that mix into the glass. And so otherwise also people don't have to spend all the money to just go do paper shredding of that. And there's not many paper shredding events as there used to be. No. So it's...
Can you put your shredded paper in a large large paper bag?
Yeah.
And put it in your recycled trash?
No, actually, because like what happens is they're just looking to eyeball it. They just want to be able to visually see, like, aha, that's a bag of paper, that's a bag of shredded paper, and so they don't have them, because they want to be able to visually see it's obviously a clear bag of shredded paper. Because if they know it's just a full bag of something, they don't know what's in the bag. They've ripped open bags before and had like diapers fall out and medical waste and stuff like that. So if they can't tell what's inside the bag, they don't know and they don't have time. So if you write like shredded paper like on the bag, stuff is going by them so quick on that conveyor belt they don't have time to read it. Or if it's laying the wrong way on the conveyor, they don't know. They just know it's a full bag, or if it gets ripped in the system. It's a good thought. I wish there was another way, but it's kind of it's what we're sort of stuck.
My question is about, the metal garbage cans that we used to always use, those metal ones?
Mm-hmm.
Can you put that in the recycle or not?
Those are too big.
Okay.
The max size for something in that recycling cart, you don't want to put anything in there like anything much bigger than like a milk jug. Really, they're willing to wrestle with things that are about 18 inches tall, I think. But
Can you put it
Let me-
pick it up like they pick up a pouch or something? If you
Yeah.
set it next to
Gotcha. Okay, that's a whole other process. But yes, big metal things or something they would do as a large item pickup, big metal items don't go through the pelletary thing. What happens with like a dishwasher, say, there's a metal recycler that's separate from pelletary that we take that stuff to. Our large item system changed a couple years ago where we just don't rove around and look for stuff like we used to. Turns out that was a huge waste of fuel and time. Like, it's about a third of the city needs a large item pickup about maybe twice a year. We were driving every street in the city of Madison 26 times a year. So we wound up, it was a huge, like, we were saving something like 900 gallons of fuel a week by going to, we have a by appointment system now, where we have to schedule your large item pickup and you put it out on the day that you pick, as opposed to just setting it out on your every other trash day kind of thing like we used to. So we have a whole other thing.
I was very interested in the pelletary system that you have for classifying the recycling, but it occurs to me that a much better way of separating the different kinds of recyclable materials is to do it at home. If I went to visit my son in Seattle quite a few years ago, and I noticed that they had for recycling, instead of 2 trash cans, I think they had something like 4 or more. And it would be so much easier to separate out the ferrous metals from the non-ferrous metals, the glass, the paper, and so on. If that were done at home, the recycling is much more efficient with that kind of a system.
You're not wrong. Like, it would probably be cleaner that way. Because there's also I know that California, there's a push for what's called dual stream, where like you have like glass in one system and then everything else in another bucket. There's other iterations of that. Quick show of hands, who's super excited to have 5 bins in their garage? That's problem one. And it's also a cost to retrofit vehicles and things like that too, because we had a system whenever recycling first started in Madison. We had a thing where we had dual stream at first in Madison, where we had like basically totes at the curb, and we were putting cardboard separate from everything else. And you run into a lot more worker injury problems. You run into a lot more, whenever you're handling stuff by hand, because people are picking up stuff and throwing things and stuff like that. So if it was multiple carts, we would need multiple more trucks. It raises the cost for more like that, especially for a municipality like us that's reliant on the way the funding mechanisms, because all of those blue trucks cost around $250,000, $300,000 a piece, and the cost of the carts. Not to say it's impossible, it's just the cost starts getting up and up and up for us to do it by ourselves. For places like Seattle, like their funding mechanisms are different because they own their own landfill. If I remember correctly, I talked with the guy that ran the Seattle system before, and they have and their tipping fees for their garbage is really high on the coast in general. It's way higher than what it is in the Midwest. And I think Seattle is different because they have this other fee on top of whatever all the garbage that goes to the landfill that helps pay for all of their other recycling stuff that they do. That's just different than what we have here, because we pay $51 a ton for all the garbage, and it's at least double on the coast, if not more. And plus they have this other kicker on for this other recycling and sustainability stuff that they do. And I don't know, and there's this other, it's a lot of it's funding, a lot of it's will to do it. It could be cleaner if we had a glass container, a metals container, a paper thing. It could. There's a learning curve. We could get it done, but right now, the green bin is what we have, barring a sea change. But it's not impossible. It's just I don't see it near term, unfortunately. But you have a good point. Yeah.
How small is too small for plastic? Like if you've got the right number on the bottom, like of a orange pill bottle, and you take the label off, then is that recyclable? And also I want to know about containers that you cannot rinse, like that have the right number on the bottom, like a toilet bowl cleaner or something like that.
I gotcha. So so a pill bottle, good example, just 3 inches tall. That's the minimum. That's the size of a standard Post-it note or a sticky note. So if it's taller than 3 inches or 3 inches like on the button, then you're good to go. So about 3 inches. So things you can't rinse like that. Most like cleaning solutions, like bleach, say, or like scrub and bubbles or whatever, those things like that. If they're empty, it's okay for the recycling. Like they're okay with doing that. There are some things you can't put in the recycling cart, like motor oil, for example. Like that's right out. That's just garbage, like that. And there are some things that have to go to the hazardous waste place, just because what's in there, if you're not certain if it's empty, if it could be poisonous, that it has to go to Dane County Clean Sweep for that. A lot of it's going to be case by case with what you have. But if it's empty and you've used it all, like my wife has super long hair, so we go through a lot of Drano at my house, you know, like not my problem, obviously. So whenever that bottle's like all the way empty, you know, it's the lid on and it goes in the cart, that's okay, you know. But like, I guess because it's Drano, you can rinse out the Drano because it's going down the drain. But it's, I think with that kind of thing, it depends on what we're talking about too, with what that particular item is. If you want to call us and go, what about this thing? I've asked Dane County Clean Sweep a lot of things where I just don't know the answer to. I just got a question from a business that had.
I thought batteries for A and AA were okay. Where did I read that?
Not in the recycling cart. Like I would put no batteries of any kind. Well, by state rule, batteries in the trash is technically not wrong, but it can still cause the fires I talked about. Oh, let me get this over my shoulder. Because you can still catch a garbage truck on fire. So we don't want that either. Batteries are better to go to a drop-off site to recycle them, or like batteries plus bulbs, we'll take them back. Certain hardware stores will do just like drill batteries or other rechargeable batteries as well. But any of the 3 Streets Division drop-off sites will take batteries back. So just bundle them up, take them back would be better. But like the alkaline batteries are mostly harmless. But if you're coming to the drop-off site anyway.
I like ordering from Amazon, but I get some things in a brown bag that says it's recyclable. Is that? And then I get some blue and white envelopes that are like plastic. Where do those go? And then I get the puffy clear plastic that has air and I've been popping those, but where do I?
Gotcha. Okay, good questions. The brown ones are interesting, the brown paper bag ones, because if you peel them out carefully, they got this white stuff. You know what that white stuff is? Cornstarch. It's a cornstarch glue. That's perfectly okay to go into the recycling cart. Those kind of bags are. That one's that's fine. That particular type of brown paper bag, that one's okay for the recycling cart. None of the rest of it is. Clear as mud, right? Because the little bubble mailers that come in with the little, those kind of things, don't put them in the recycling cart even though they got the little arrow on them. I don't know if you can take them to like the take back programs to take plastic bags, like some of the grocery stores, because one of the big buyers of the plastic bags is a place called Trex. They make plastic lumber out of it. I don't know if those Amazon mailers are okay for that program. I honestly just don't know. Because most of the bags will go there, but not every place that does plastic bags will necessarily take that place there. That's a mystery to me still, because I haven't been able to hunt that down yet. The pillows should be okay for that, because they feel like a plastic bag for me. So I would put the pillows in with the plastic bags that you take back to like Target or like Metcalfe's or wherever the grocery store is. The other thing with plastic bags, because by state law, City of Madison, we cannot ban them. We cannot tell stores to recycle them. We can't do anything with plastic bags. So any place that's offering plastic bag recycling, there's no reason for them to lie to you, because we can't mandate anything with them at all by state law. We're just stuck with them. And so it's the rules by auxiliary container. That's how the rule's written. So so I would pop those little boogers like you're doing, And if you have like a plastic bag thing, cinch it up and take it back to the store with you and drop them off there. Those mailers, maybe the same place. I don't know, but don't put it in your cart. If you put them both, if you put the pillows and the mailers in the trash, that wouldn't be wrong. But the pillows and the mailer do not go in the recycling cart. The paper bag thingy, recycling cart. Good job.